Hey everyone, tonight I have 5 terrifying stories from people who were alone at night when something happened that they'll never forget. There's something uniquely vulnerable about being alone at night. The darkness amplifies every sound, every creak, every shadow. When you're by yourself with no one to reassure you that everything's okay, your mind can play tricks on you. But sometimes it's not your imagination. Sometimes there really is something there. These 5 stories will make you dread being home alone after dark. Let's begin. Story 1. The Knock at 3 a.m. This first story comes from a woman named Emily who lived alone in a small apartment in Portland, Maine. Emily had moved into the apartment about 6 months earlier. It was a quiet building, mostly young professionals and students. She felt safe there. One night, in October, Emily woke up around 3 a.m. to use the bathroom. As she was walking back to bed, she heard something that made her stop. A knock on her door. 3 sharp knocks. Emily froze. Who would be knocking on her door at 3 in the morning? She walked quietly to the door and looked through the peephole. The hallway was empty. Emily's heart was pounding. Maybe she'd imagined it, or maybe it was someone knocking on a neighbor's door. She went back to bed. 5 minutes later, the knocking came again. 3 knocks. Same rhythm, same intensity. Emily got up and looked through the peephole again. Still no one. "Hello? Who's there?" Emily called through the door. No response. Emily grabbed her phone, ready to call the police if the knocking happened again. She waited. Silence. After about 10 minutes, Emily went back to bed, though she couldn't sleep. She just lay there staring at the ceiling, listening. Around 4 a.m., she finally started to drift off. And then she heard it. The doorknob turning. Someone was trying to open her door. Emily sat bolt upright, her heart racing. The doorknob rattled. Someone was definitely trying to get in. "I'm calling the police!" Emily shouted. The rattling stopped. Emily called 911 immediately. The police arrived within minutes and searched the building. They found no one in the hallways or stairwells, but they did find something disturbing. Scratches on Emily's door, around the lock, like someone had been trying to pick it. The police filed a report and increased patrols in the area. But 2 nights later, it happened again. 3 a.m., 3 knocks. Emily called the police again. This time, they suggested she install a security camera. Emily bought a cheap doorbell camera the next day and installed it herself. That night, she stayed up, watching her phone, monitoring the camera feed. At 2:58 a.m., a figure appeared on the screen. A man wearing dark clothes and a baseball cap pulled low over his face. He walked up to Emily's door and stood there for a moment, perfectly still. Then he reached out and tried the doorknob. It was locked. The man stood there for another minute, then walked away. Emily called the police and sent them the video footage. They enhanced the image and were able to identify the man. His name was Kevin Marsh. He lived 2 buildings over and had a criminal record: breaking and entering, assault, and attempted sexual assault. Kevin is now serving a 5-year sentence. Emily moved out of that apartment immediately. She now lives in a building with 24-hour security and never sleeps without her door double locked and a security camera running. Because she knows what could have happened if she'd opened that door, or if she'd forgotten to lock it even once. Story 2. The Window Watcher. This story comes from a college student named Brandon,
who was house-sitting for his parents while they were on a 2-week vacation in Europe. Brandon was 21 and happy to have the house to himself. His parents lived in a quiet suburban neighborhood, and he planned to use the time to catch up on schoolwork and relax. The first few days were uneventful. Brandon fell into a routine, working on assignments during the day, making dinner, watching TV at night. But on the 5th night, something happened that shattered his sense of security. Brandon was in the living room around 11 p.m. watching a movie when he saw something in his peripheral vision. Movement outside the window. Brandon looked. Someone was standing in the backyard, about 20 feet from the house, facing the window. A person, tall, wearing dark clothing, just standing there, staring. Brandon's stomach dropped. He jumped up and closed the curtains immediately. His heart was pounding. He grabbed his phone and called 911. "There's someone in my backyard. They're just standing there, watching the house." The dispatcher told him to stay inside and lock all the doors. Officers were on their way. Brandon ran through the house, checking that every door and window was locked. When he came back to the living room, he carefully peeked through a gap in the curtains. The person was still there, still staring at the house. 5 minutes later, Brandon heard sirens approaching. He looked out the window again. The figure was gone. The police arrived and searched the backyard and surrounding area. They found footprints in the grass directly in front of the living room window, right where Brandon had seen the figure. But no sign of whoever had been there. The police filed a report and suggested Brandon install some outdoor motion sensor lights. Brandon barely slept that night. He kept all the curtains closed and checked the locks every hour. The next evening, around the same time, Brandon was in the kitchen making dinner when he felt like he was being watched. He turned toward the kitchen window. A face was pressed against the glass. The same person, staring directly at him. Brandon screamed and dropped the pan he was holding. The face disappeared. Brandon called 911 again. But by the time the police arrived, the person was gone. This time, the police found something that made Brandon's blood run cold. On the outside of the kitchen window, there was a handprint and a message written in the condensation on the glass. "I see you." The police dusted for fingerprints and increased patrols in the neighborhood. Brandon called his parents and told them what was happening. They immediately cut their vacation short and flew home. While waiting for them to return, Brandon stayed with a friend. The police eventually identified the person through fingerprints left on the window. It was a neighbor from 2 houses down, a man in his 30s named Darren Cole. Darren was arrested and charged with stalking and trespassing. During the investigation, police discovered that Darren had been obsessed with Brandon's mother for years. He'd been taking photos of her, following her to work, keeping logs of her daily routine. When she left for vacation, he'd seen Brandon at the house and decided to terrorize him. Darren pleaded guilty and was sentenced to 3 years in prison, followed by a restraining order. Brandon's family sold the house and moved to a different neighborhood. Brandon never house sits anymore because he can't forget that face pressed against the window and those words in the condensation. I see you.
Story 3. The Basement Sounds. This story comes from a man named Vincent who was staying at his grandmother's house while she was in the hospital recovering from surgery. Vincent's grandmother lived in an old Victorian house in rural Pennsylvania. The house had been in the family for generations, and Vincent had spent summers there as a kid. He'd always found the house a little creepy. It was old, with creaky floors and strange noises, but he'd never been scared of it until that night. Vincent arrived in the evening and got settled in. He made dinner, watched some TV, and around 11 p.m. decided to go to bed. He was in the guest bedroom on the second floor when he heard something. A thud coming from below. The basement. Vincent sat up and listened. Another thud. Then a dragging sound, like something heavy being pulled across the floor. Vincent's heart started racing. His grandmother lived alone. There shouldn't be anyone else in the house. Vincent grabbed his phone and crept downstairs. The basement door was at the end of the hallway. It was closed. Vincent put his ear against the door. The dragging sound continued back and forth, back and forth. "Hello?" Vincent called out. "Is someone down there?" The sound stopped. Vincent's hand was shaking as he reached for the doorknob. He opened the door slowly. The basement was dark. Vincent found the light switch and flipped it on. A single bulb illuminated the wooden stairs leading down. "Hello?" No response. Vincent carefully descended the stairs, his phone in one hand, ready to call 911. The basement was full of old furniture, boxes, and junk accumulated over decades. Vincent looked around. Nothing seemed out of place. He checked behind the old furniture, in the corners, everywhere someone could hide. Nothing. Vincent was about to go back upstairs when he noticed something. Scratches on the concrete floor. Fresh scratches, like something had been dragged across it recently. The scratches led to an old wooden door at the back of the basement. Vincent had never noticed that door before. His grandmother had mentioned the house had an old coal chute from back when the house was heated with coal, but it had been sealed up decades ago. Vincent walked over to the door and tried the handle. Locked. He knocked on the door. "Hello? Is anyone in there?" Silence. And then, from the other side of the door, he heard breathing. Heavy, raspy. Vincent stumbled backward, his heart pounding. "Who's there?" The breathing continued, and then a voice, low and guttural. "Let me out." Vincent ran. He sprinted up the stairs, out of the house, and into his car. He called 911 from the driveway. When the police arrived, they searched the house from top to bottom. They found the basement door Vincent had described. It took them several minutes to break the lock. When they finally opened it, they found a small space, the old coal chute, just big enough for a person to squeeze through. But it was empty. The police searched the area outside where the coal chute opened up. They found evidence that someone had recently used it. Disturbed soil, footprints, cigarette butts. Someone had been living in Vincent's grandmother's basement, getting in and out through the old coal chute. The police believed it was a homeless person who'd found a way inside and was using the space as shelter.
but they never found who it was. Vincent's grandmother had locks installed on the coal chute opening and the basement door. But Vincent never stayed at that house again, because he still hears that voice in his nightmares. "Let me out." And he wonders, if the police hadn't arrived when they did, what would have happened? Would that door have opened from the inside?
Story 4. The Phone Calls. This story comes from a woman named Melissa, who was spending the night alone in her apartment while her roommate was out of town. Melissa was used to being alone. She worked from home and often spent days by herself without issue. But this particular night, something happened that changed everything. Around 9 p.m., Melissa's phone rang. Unknown number. She normally didn't answer unknown numbers, but she was expecting a call from a delivery service, so she picked up. "Hello?" Silence. "Hello? Is anyone there?" Heavy breathing. Then the call disconnected. Melissa shrugged it off, probably a butt dial or a prank call. 10 minutes later, her phone rang again. Same unknown number. Melissa answered. "Hello?" A voice this time, male, deep, distorted. "I'm watching you." Melissa's stomach tightened. "Who is this?" "Look at your window." Melissa's apartment was on the 3rd floor. She walked to the living room window and looked out. The street below was empty. No one was there. "There's no one there! Stop calling me!" She hung up, but her hands were shaking. 5 minutes later, the phone rang again. Melissa didn't answer. It rang again and again. After the 5th call, Melissa answered, angry now. "Stop calling me or I'm calling the police!" The voice laughed, a low, disturbing laugh. "Wrong window." Melissa's blood ran cold. She had 3 windows in her apartment. The living room window facing the street, the bedroom window facing the alley, and the kitchen window facing the building next door. Melissa ran to the bedroom. She looked out the window into the dark alley below. A figure was standing there, looking up at her apartment, holding a phone to their ear. Melissa screamed and dropped her phone. She ran to the front door and made sure it was locked. She grabbed her laptop and called 911 through an online chat feature. "Someone's outside my building. They've been calling me. They're watching me." The dispatcher sent officers immediately. Melissa huddled in the corner of her bathroom, the only room with no windows, until she heard sirens. When the police arrived, they searched the area. The person was gone. But they found something disturbing. On the wall of the building across from Melissa's bedroom window, someone had spray painted a message. "I can see inside." The police took photos and filed a report. They traced the phone number to a burner phone purchased with cash. Untraceable. Melissa stayed with her parents for a week. When she came back, she had blackout curtains installed on all her windows and changed her phone number. She never got another call, but sometimes, late at night, Melissa can't help but peek through the curtains, just to make sure no one's standing there, watching. Story 5. The Open Door. This final story comes from a man named Aaron, who was staying overnight at his late grandfather's house to sort through belongings. Aaron's grandfather had passed away a month earlier, and the family was preparing to sell the house. Aaron volunteered to spend a night there, organizing documents and deciding what to keep. The house was in a rural area, surrounded by woods, about 20 minutes from the nearest town. Aaron arrived in the afternoon and spent several hours going through boxes and paperwork. As evening approached, he made dinner, watched some TV, and around 11 p.m. decided to go to bed. He was staying in the guest bedroom on the first floor. Aaron locked the front and back doors, turned off the lights, and got into bed. He was almost asleep when he heard something. A door opening. The distinctive creak of the back door. Aaron's eyes snapped open. He sat up and listened. Footsteps. Inside the house. Slow, deliberate, walking through the kitchen. Aaron's heart was racing. He grabbed his phone and turned on the flashlight. He carefully opened the bedroom door and looked out into the hallway. The hallway was dark, but he could see light coming from the kitchen. Someone was in there. Aaron's mind raced. Should he confront them, call the police, hide? He decided to call 911 first. "There's someone in my house. I locked the doors, but someone's inside." The dispatcher told him to stay where he was and lock the bedroom door. Officers were on their way. Aaron locked the door and waited. The footsteps moved from the kitchen to the living room. Aaron could hear someone moving around, opening drawers, shifting objects. And then the footsteps stopped, right outside Aaron's bedroom door. Aaron held his breath, staring at the door. The doorknob started to turn, slowly. Aaron backed into the corner of the room, holding his phone. The door was locked, but Aaron could see the knob moving. And then, a voice. "Aaron." It was his grandfather's voice. Aaron's blood turned to ice. His grandfather was dead. "Aaron, it's cold out here. Let me in." Aaron didn't respond. He couldn't breathe. "Aaron, please, I just want to come inside." The doorknob rattled harder. "Let me in, Aaron." Aaron pressed himself against the wall, tears streaming down his face. The rattling continued for what felt like forever. And then, sirens in the distance. The doorknob stopped moving. Aaron heard footsteps running through the house. The back door slammed. When the police arrived, Aaron was still in the corner of the bedroom, shaking. The officers searched the house. The back door was wide open. Muddy footprints led through the kitchen and hallway. Someone had definitely been inside. But here's what disturbed Aaron the most. When the police played back the 911 recording, which had captured audio from Aaron's phone, the voice outside his door wasn't his grandfather's. It was deep, distorted, inhuman. Whatever was outside that door wasn't human. Aaron sold the house without ever going back. He hired people to clear out the remaining belongings because he knows what he heard, and he knows it wasn't his grandfather. It was something that knew his grandfather's voice, something that knew his name, and something that wanted inside. So, which story scared you the most? The woman who had someone knocking on her door at 3 a.m. every night? The college student who was being watched through the windows? The man who heard something or someone locked in the basement? The woman who received calls from someone watching her? Or the man who heard his dead grandfather's voice outside his bedroom door? Let me know in the comments below. And the next time you're home alone at night, lock your doors, close your curtains, and remember, just because you're alone doesn't mean you're safe. Thanks for watching.
And as always, stay safe out there.